Have you ever tried to brown a chicken breast and put it in the pan, and you waited, and you flipped it over, and it was kind of gray? You cooked it on the other side, thinking when you flipped it over the second time it might turn brown, and you flipped it, and the other side was gray. And you continued to do this, and pretty soon what you wound up with a sort of grayish, whitish, rubbery chicken breast that didn't look very palatable and was probably overcooked. Next time you try to cook a chicken breast, if you follow these simple rules, you will be successful. The process that you're going to use is called saute, and there are some simple rules to always remember, whether you're cooking a chicken breast, a pork chop, a piece of fish, or vegetables. The rules always stay the same. So the first thing you need to remember is the food that goes into the pan needs to be dry. Pat it dry with paper towels on both sides. The food also needs to be at room temperature. If it's cold out of the refrigerator in the center, by the time the center heats up to a temperature of being done, the outside of the food is going to be overcooked. So take it out a few minutes in advance and let it warm up a bit. Your pan needs to be hot. And in this process, it involves a slight bit of fat. So you're either going to put fat in the pan or on the food. Today we're going to put fat into the pan. And it doesn't take a lot, enough to coat the bottom of the pan. Now, we have dry, room temperature chicken breasts, hot pan, fat in the pan, and the chicken breast goes into the pan. Notice how I'm drying the other side as I put it in. We're going to let this cook for about 2 minutes on this side, then we're going to turn it. It's important that there's enough room for air to circulate around the food. Otherwise, you can see as this cooks, there's steam coming off the chicken. If the steam stays within the pan, you're no longer sauteing, you're steaming. This is a dry method of cooking. So at the 2-minute point, we're going to turn these, and you'll be amazed at the lovely, beautiful brownness on the other side. This is a great method of cooking to use for any kind of protein. It's a good method to use for cooking a steak. The amount of time you take cooking your steak is dependent on how thick it is. You want to turn the food every 2 minutes. Don't put it in and leave it on one side too long. The process of turning it allows the heat to penetrate the food more evenly. If you cook it too long on one side and then flip it, it tends to burn on the outside before the interior temperature is at a done temp. So turn every 2 minutes. Don't crowd it. Let's just run down those rules one more time. The food needs to be dry, at room temperature, a hot pan with fat either in the pan or on the food. Don't crowd the food in the pan. Turn every 2 minutes. And last but not least, we never cover a pan when we're sauteing because we want that moisture that's evaporating to escape. We don't want it to collect in the pan while we're steaming. We're at the 2-minute point. It's time to turn these the first time. And look how beautiful and brown they are. That's because they were dry when they went in the pan. Probably the most important part of this technique is to make sure that the food is dry before it goes into the pan. So let's talk about what's happening in this pan. If you put the chicken breast in when it's wet, the moisture on the outside of the food hits the hot skillet and turns to steam. Meanwhile, the surface of the food that's still wet cannot get above 212 degrees until all that moisture burns off. At 212 degrees, the proteins start to cook, but you don't get the brown reaction that's called the Maillard reaction. The Maillard reaction happens at about 320 degrees. What you do when you put the dry food in the pan is instantly your temperature will go up to 320 degrees, and the browning happens, and you don't wind up with gray chicken breasts. These have cooked for 2 minutes on the second side. They're not quite done yet, so I'm going to flip them again, and then I'm going to talk about how do we tell if this is done. If you cut into it, the juices are going to run into the pan, and you're not going to have a lovely juicy chicken breast. It is very easy to tell if they're done. You can use an instant read thermometer. For chicken, the interior temperature should read 155 to 160 degrees. I don't have an instant read thermometer at this particular moment here at the stove, so I'm going to show you how to tell without using a thermometer. If you let your hand hang loose and you feel this part right here, this is what raw meat tends to feel like. If you could hold a piece of paper in between your thumb and forefinger but pull it out easily, this is what rare meat feels like. If that were a $100 bill and I were trying to take it from you, you'd be holding it pretty tightly. This is what medium feels like. If you make a fist, this is what well done feels like. And if it's as hard as the tip of your nose, it's overcooked. So for chicken, what we're looking for is well done. 160 degrees is well done. And if you just use your finger to push on the meat, it should feel like that fist. And I think this one's almost done. This one is done. We have one that's done and one that's not quite done. It's a little bit thicker. So let's take this one out. We're going to flip this one. Doesn't that look a whole lot more appetizing than a gray blob of chicken? So this second breast is now finished. Doesn't that look great? Next time you saute, make sure you follow the rules, no matter whether you're cooking chicken, pork, or fish, and you'll find out that it's perfect every single time. Enjoy.